Hello, everyone. In this episode of Director Discussions, I truly cannot believe my luck. I'm fortunate enough to sit down with one of my favorite filmmakers in the world, the amazing Wes Ball. Wes is the director behind one of the biggest films in the world right now, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which you can all go watch in theaters right now. And on top of that, Wes is also the director behind the Maze Runner trilogy. But for some reason, Wes has very kindly agreed to take the time to sit down with some little jackass like me. So, Wes, thank you so much. How are you doing today, sir?
Happy to be here, man. Happy to be here.
Dude, what's this period like for you? You know, the films out in the world right now. I've chatted with a few filmmakers, and especially I remember when I chatted with Ross and Turber, he was telling me about this idea, the death of the author. You know, when a film goes out there in the world, it's not yours anymore. Do you feel like the film still belongs to you, or what's this period like for you?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I spend, in this case, it was almost like 5-year journey, when we first started. Um, but all I do is think about the audience, like, oh, they're gonna love this. Oh, they won't go for this, or oh, that's all I have in my mind is the audience. And as
Yeah,
soon as the movie comes out, it's theirs, and I kind of I turn away. I can't go back and watch it. I can't watch it with audiences. It's a unique process where you have to kind of like send your kid out into the wild and let them go fend for themselves.
was it always that way? Even when you were doing
Yeah,
Maze Runner,
it's
could
always been
you?
that way. I tried it on Maze Runner, because and Maze Runner was interesting because when I made Maze Runner, um, the studio was so high on it that they greenlit the sequel before the movie even came out in theaters.
Yeah,
So I was basically shooting the movie, the second Maze Runner movie, when the first one came out. So I didn't get to really go out there and have like a let me go absorb it all, this kind of
yeah,
crazy release. It was a big success for the studio, that first movie. And yeah, it was interesting, man. I mean, that's where I kind of learned that, oh yeah, I can't,
yeah,
you spend so much time with it. I can't really live with I can't be an audience anymore for it, because
yeah.
all I see are the choices. All I see are the little things that, hung us up, or the things that, no one would ever know about. And yeah, it's super interesting that the process of like kind of relinquishing all of your stuff, after you put the movie out. But yeah, that's the way it is. It's probably better for it.
Yeah.
Um, you kind of move on to the next thing.
And how is it for you in the edit, when you've looked at this shot every single day and it's hard, like you just can't be objective anymore. That's what's fascinating. When I talk to horror filmmakers, I ask them like, how do you know if something's scary when you've played it over again 400 times and played it without music, played it with music? So what's that like for you to try and remain kind of kind of pull yourself away from it in the edit? Do you have to take time away from it? Do you have to go watch something else, or can you just, what's that process like?
Yeah, it's very interesting, especially in a process like this, where it's such a unique process post, because you're working on the story, you're doing all the normal
Yeah.
things that a movie does of trying to figure out how to find pacing and the shots and all that kind of editing, all that kind of stuff. But we also have this year-long process of the visual effects side of things, where we're analyzing every little, pixel, to like for the shot, especially in our case when most of the shots are all apes.
Yeah.
But that is the great trick, is how do you stay objective when you're so lost in the forest of it all? You never really can avoid it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And especially the longer the process goes, the harder it becomes, like some of the major movies, like they were really, really short, like I think the second movie we did in a year. We turned it around, shot it, everything, and edited it in a
Wow.
year. And that's,
Wow.
you don't have time to like, sit and think about it really. You just have to kind of go and do it. But on this movie, it was really it was purely about bringing in friends. I have lots
Yeah.
of friends that are filmmakers and
Yeah.
storytellers, and I bring them on and bring them in and let them see the early versions of this thing, and like, tell me what you think. What am I missing? What am I not seeing? You know what I mean? Because like, for, we have such a, obviously, as filmmakers, we have such a unique kind of, challenge, is that we know all the choices, we know all the things that we're worried about, we know, all the labor it took to get that shot or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so, I think with each movie you get better at, killing your darlings is the phrase.
Yeah.
But I brought a lot of friends in for this one to just look at it. And obviously that's very difficult because even for us, like, it's this movie that's like this fantasy movie. You're supposed to like, absorb into this other world that isn't possible, talking apes
Yeah.
and crumbling cityscapes, and all this crazy, kind
Yeah.
of very unique kind of visual thing. And when you watch the movie the first time, none of those visual effects are done. And
Yeah.
so everything about the movie, what you're watching, is pulling you away from that experience that you is so critical, which is
Yeah.
kind of to buy it, to buy into this crazy world. And so it's a really difficult thing where you'll get a lot of comments and you have to kind of wade through them and say that's going to be fine when the visual effects are done, or oh, that's a
Yeah.
good point there we never thought about. So it is probably the challenge of, I think, any filmmaker, is to like somehow still be able to distinguish the forest from the trees. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you just kind of, with experience, I think you start to get that. But yeah, it's always a challenge, man. You never really quite shake it.
And that's what I love about George Lucas, who just like every 2 weeks he just re-edits Star Wars and just puts a new
Yeah,
thing.
right.
Like it's like,
Yeah.
it's fascinating just seeing that aspect of really knowing when to, take yourself away from someone. And I guess remaining objective is a big thing. Like Christopher McQuarrie mentioned this story about how Francis Ford Coppola was doing the director's commentary for The Godfather, and through the whole thing he was like, "Oh, that shot doesn't work," or "I wish I had
Yeah.
more time." So it's like if he can't enjoy The Godfather,
Yeah.
why are the rest of us even
Well, that's
trying?
what I always tell people, because like people know me as sort of like a glass half empty kind of guy. I'm like, yeah, it's okay, yeah, it's all right. So I am that. It's that there's I forget what the word is. There's a Japanese word for the the art of the pursuit of perfection, right?
Yeah.
It's not trying to achieve perfection. It's really in the art of like of reaching for it. You know what I mean? And constantly
Yeah.
reaching into that dark. I forget the word is. It's really cool. Like a simple little poetic world. Japanese culture is so cool. But anyway, I really kind of attached to that idea where I enjoy kind of the you know trying to never giving up, and it's what Pixar does too, really so well, right? Like they
Yeah.
were always, I was back in their heyday, their big thing was always knowing when to keep pushing, because
Yeah.
like that's the difference that sets apart them from a lot of other kind of places at the time, was that they would take an idea that was good,
Yeah.
but they would be willing to scrap it for that idea that they don't even know yet that
Yeah.
is the best. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so that is a real thing, and I think, you know, if I ever am, at the end of a movie saying, that's it, I'm done, it's perfect, I'm totally happy, there's nothing more I would do, I'd probably stop making movies,
Yeah.
because it's that thing, it's that unfulfilled, we almost got there. It wasn't quite what I wanted, but we almost got there. It's that kind of like pursuit
Yeah.
that drives you, I think, to do the next one and to like, put that to bed, ignore all the stuff of the world out there and go off to the next thing, the next kind of unknown territory, which is a very lonely and scary place to be. But there is that, I don't know, it's that drive, that fire that kind of drives people, I guess, you know,
Yeah.
to try to achieve something.
Yeah. And do you feel like film, when is it more about taking away? Like, do you
Yeah.
think you're subtracting? Because I was
Yeah.
chatting with Eric Jenderson, who's a screenwriter, and he blew my mind by telling me like it's not about adding on or
Yeah.
putting more, which I'm sure is what the audience would think. You're constantly adding on, trying to make it bigger. It's about how can you take parts and aspects away? So do you feel
That's
like
right.
is it subtractive, that editing process?
Yeah. Usually that's what it is, because ultimately what it comes down to for the audience is clarity.
Yeah.
Clarity is everything, and that's clarity of narrative, clarity of character choices,
Yeah.
clarity of the visual, the edit. Everything comes down to sound.
Wow.
Sound is a huge one. So
Yeah.
clarity is all that. And so that's when you do start taking away, it's usually in the service of trying to make things really clear. When you have too many ideas, you can't process all of it. And so, simple story well told is the really the goal. You know what I mean? And so you're right.
Yeah.
Most of the process that ends up being that we are taking stuff away, and especially on this movie, it was really difficult because, you know, we had a very long script. It
Really?
was the script was too long, and there was amazing ideas in it. Josh Friedman, our incredible screenwriter, he's just brilliant, and he's wrestling with a lot of great stuff. You know what I mean? Really cool stuff that we all love, like especially stuff that I shot that I absolutely love.
Wow.
But it's just when you watch with an audience, you feel it, where it's like,
Doesn't
oh,
work.
that's not what they don't want to go there. They don't want to go there, or something like that. And so, James Cameron is really, I learned this from James Cameron watching his kind of stuff. When you watch a lot of his movies, they're usually always the same thing. They're always really long, packed with lots of great, awesome ideas. But you watch like Abyss, you watch Aliens,
Yeah.
Terminator 2 even, and you see some of the scenes they cut. It's like amazing. It's like, oh my God, it's like a whole subplot that it
Yeah.
just lifted out. And so that's kind of a really good, I think, learning experience watching when there used to be DVD behind the scenes stuff, and just watching that film school on a disc kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, you would see like, oh wow, if you take something away, it actually gives strength to the other ideas in
Yeah.
some weird way. Not always, and that's the trick, honestly, of editing is you try to figure that out. You try to figure out what can go that doesn't hurt the movie, and usually it's always in the first half of the movie. Usually where you find the audience they're ready, they're smart, they're ready to go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they'll make big leaps, and it's by the end that you really have to be careful and make sure that all the choices are strong. But you're right. It's a very interesting thing. And even on set though, that's been like an experience thing for me, like dialogue. I'm getting really much better. Just like, oh, we don't need that. Cut it, cut it, cut it. Just cutting it
Wow.
right there on set and don't even shoot
Yeah.
it. You know what I mean? Because you can feel it. You can feel like you don't need that. You can say that with your eyes. You don't need to say that, with dialogue and stuff. So I think there's an element of that where it's just experience and to some degree taste, where you kind of hone those ideas of subtraction for clarity's sake and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's a very wise thing that I guess Eric, whoever Eric was,
Yeah.
who said that that's very much a part of the editing process for sure.
Is it a battle between your heart and mind, when you're
Oh
doing
yeah,
this? Yeah, is it like,
oh
and
yeah.
which one do you listen to? Which one? Because will you know if you're like, oh no, I know it has to go, but I'm fighting it. Like, what's that like? Which is it?
Yeah, the truth is it's really hard in your first movie. It's
Really?
really hard because you fall in love with it. It's like, oh my God, I made a movie. And
Yeah.
that scene, those shots that we struggled with, and it was hot and I was running out of time, the sun was setting, and we shot it and it came together. And like it's hard not to be kind of enamored with that thing and that achievement that you
Wow.
did.
Yeah.
But again, I think as you make more movies, you start to realize that, you start to let go of those things. And that is that kill your darlings thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're right. It is a challenge, finding which one to listen to at what point, the heart and the head. You know what I mean? It's absolutely true. And you can do harm by overthinking something. You know what I mean? And I don't know, I've gotten, I think, better at some of that stuff where I'll, a lot of times like issues I have with the script, and then, it's not just me and the script, it's the whole team, it's producers, it's the studio, it's the writers, of course, and all the rest of my crew too. I let them weigh in on the script as well. But I find myself a lot of times now, things that I'm like, I'm not sure about this, guys. This doesn't feel right. I can't put my finger on what is it's not working, but something doesn't feel right inherently when we get to the edit.
It'll go.
It doesn't work,
Wow.
And so I got a couple scenes in this movie where I was pretty damn sure that this wasn't going to work, but a lot of really talented people around me were very sure that this was needed, and I said, okay, fine, we'll shoot it. I can cut it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
knew looking ahead, I knew there was a way that I could get around it. And so I'm starting to get better at that sort of thing, but I think it's just a craft and an experience that I think that you hone, you know what I mean, as you make
Yeah.
more and more movies, you know what I mean? Some people are just gifted with that taste sense. So a lot of people talk about talent. I typically don't think about it as talent. I think of it as taste.
Really.
Um, some people are just their taste is much more refined, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
From the start, and some people have to work at it and become better at it, you know what I mean? So, I don't know where I am in that spectrum, but um, it's an interesting process making movies, man. It's so interesting where, scenes that you're so sure are gonna work when you're making them. You're like, this is people are gonna love this.
Yeah.
And you put
Yeah.
it in the
Yeah.
movie
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, shit, they hate it. You know what I mean? Or it's like scenes that you're like, they're gonna hate this, it's gonna suck.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to cut this, I'm gonna have to reshoot it. Boom, it's
Wow.
people's favorite scene in the movie. It's
Wow.
just
Yeah.
it's just wild, you know what I mean? So yeah, this movie in particular for me was very much, I had never shown the movie as often as I had in this one, where I brought my friends in, like, Justin Marks, who just did Shogun. He was a friend. We were working on a
Wow.
project, brought him in to kind of watch an early cut. My buddy T.S. Nolan, he came in. Brian Duffield's a friend. I had him come in and watch it. Just getting people's input and thoughts, and like, hey, I was with you on this and I wasn't with you on this. And it's fun talking to filmmakers because they're usually better at understanding what I'm reaching for.
Yeah.
And usually that's the note I'm looking for. It's not, oh, that scene sucked. It was more like, hey, I wasn't feeling what you wanted me to feel in that scene. Oh, that's usually a
Yeah.
setup problem. That's usually problems in a movie are about the setup and not the actual, problem itself. You know what I mean? It's about, you didn't earn that moment. You didn't earn that emotion. The audience kind of wasn't there with you in that place. So dude, it's wild. That's why no one's figured this out. It's different every time. If we had all figured this out, every movie would be a hit. And maybe AI will be helping with us. Who knows? They'll be able to know the human mind better than humans themselves. But
AI
it's a
apes,
wild,
AI apes coming soon. What?
yeah, right. But yeah, no, filmmaking is any of these kind of creative endeavors, really. It's a perfect blend of kind of craft and science and psychology. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that magic thing that just happens, it's sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's fascinating. I was talking to Gareth Davis. I was doing an interview with him, and I was talking to him about the emotional effect his film had on me. And I was like, how did you like, was there a formula as to why it affected me?
Mm,
He was like, he knows there's filmmakers who will exploit formulas or storytelling devices, but sincerity is kind of where that came from. And to me, that was really, really fascinating. And so I'd love to ask you about instinct. M. Night Shyamalan
mm.
talks about how when he made his first film, it was like, I've never made a film before. This is just instinct. This feels right. And
Yeah.
then as he made more film, that instinct started, it wasn't so much instinct, to start becoming knowledge. On this film I did this, and now he's actually at a point where he wants to go back to that aspect of
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
trusting the instinct. And to me, I was like,
You can see it
wow,
in his movies too, actually.
yeah, really, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure it's different for you as a filmmaker, but what's fascinating is like, you were thrown into the deep end straight away. You were given a studio trilogy. I mean, for first time filmmakers, you don't really get more like that. So what was that process like of dealing with your instincts?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's wild. But for me it was I learned it fairly early on that I just found that when I trusted my instinct, I had this gut feeling.
Yeah.
When I trusted that and went with it and ignored whatever the outside kind of things were, I was usually more successful for
Wow.
whatever reason. Now, that could be because I was right,
Yeah.
and you should have listened to me, or it could have been that I was I felt it in such a personal level that somehow that raw, primordial thing
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
inside me driving me made me do a better job at executing it. Yeah, I don't know which one it is, but I learned to trust my instincts very, very early on, and sometimes to a fault. Sometimes I find that I trust my instincts and I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But I just find on average that usually when I listen to that little voice in the back of my head, that quiet voice, you know what I mean? That you have to like sometimes pay attention to when you have lots of other screaming voices at you.
Yeah.
I just find that they usually um, people identify it with it better. And again, I don't know if that's again why that is exactly, but I've learned to trust it. And so sometimes that's a problem because I can't explain why. And it just comes with, as I do more movies and hopefully they're all successful and stuff, that you don't have to explain yourself sometimes.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, but but along with that instinct thing, and I am a big believer in that. That is a true thing. Like that's something I learned in film school. That's something I learned in the short films that I made after film school. When I made things for other people, it felt something else. And when I made them for myself and I followed that thing inside this is going to be cool. I believe in this.
Yeah.
It works. But what's really important to kind of a companion that needs to go with that instinct is humility. Humility is a thing that is poison if you lose your humility as you get further and further along in success.
Yeah.
We all know it. Those filmmakers that don't have those people that can tell them, "Hey, dude, this thing is so good," or they're too afraid to just give them honest feedback. You
Yeah.
know, so I am I probably to a fault probably try to hold on to a sense of humility and knowing that I can be wrong. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's trying to balance those two things, where it's like, okay, so a lot of people are telling me that this is wrong. Am I just being stubborn here, or am I following some deeper instinct that I really truly believe in? And that's just something you got to kind of wade through and decide for
Yeah.
yourself as kind of at least in films, you know, on theatrical films, the director is kind of the last decision maker there, you know, to some degree. The studios obviously, you know, we've heard the horror stories of studios taking over things. I haven't been in that position yet, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's an interesting process, man. You know, being in that place. It's a being a director. I always tell people it is a very lonely job. And I don't want people to feel like, oh, poor baby. It's not that. It's just that it's that, you know, you know, the idea is that you're off on this adventure, you're on this quest, you know,
Yeah.
and you're going over that mountain, or you're going off to the horizon, like you know, the great explorers, you know, crossing the ocean and not knowing what's on the other side. As a filmmaker, you're oftentimes in that place, and most of the time you're at the head of that cluster of people, and
Wow.
your job is to inspire all those people around you, that it takes the army that it takes to accomplish these movies. And you know, you got to inspire them to follow you into those murky waters, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so a lot of times when you're in this place, when you encounter an obstacle and you look around and there's no one next to you, usually they're all kind of behind you looking at you like, what do we do next? You know what I mean? So it's a very lonely thing, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then ultimately, like in editing, all those things you're talking about, you know, trusting your instincts, all those kind of things, you know, when you have everyone telling you like, this isn't going to work, this isn't going to work, this isn't good. And you're like, it's going to work. It's going to work. It's like, that can be it's a very lonely kind of place.
Yeah.
But you know, yeah, you know, you roll with it, you know, and you have great people. You hopefully you have lots of great talented people around you that are kind of, you know, part of your support network. That, you know, like I've always had great producers, always, you know, and I've always had these great experiences where it's like, you know, they'll be free to say their piece, they'll say their opinions, and they'll you know, argue me about something or agree with me on something. But especially on the argument stuff, the best kind of things are like, here's my point of view, you know, and here's why I think that is. But after me telling you all this stuff, I trust you that you will listen to that, and you will honestly, you know, take it in, because I
Yeah.
know I am that way. I'm not just like, you know, screw you, it's my idea or nothing. You know, I've had a great experience with, you know, producers and studios that I have that humility, that I will take that into consideration and stuff. But they also will tell me, you know, but if you still believe the way you do it, go with it, because
Yeah.
they support it. You know what I mean? And so that's a huge, huge thing. You know what I mean? So I don't know, I'm rambling now, but
No,
yeah,
I love it, man. I
it's
love it.
I've only made 4 movies, so what the hell do I know? You know what I mean? I'm still figuring it out as we go here. You know what I mean?
But I mean,
But
like,
it's been a hell of a lot of fun so far.
yeah, man, and I mean, I can't tell you how much I admire, you know, looking at someone like you who has made 4 films. And yeah, all 4 of those films have been studio films. And like, even after 3 films going straight to something like Apes, like, maybe you don't know how big, I'm sure you do, but like, for someone like me to see that, man, you're a fucking legend, man, really. So, like, it's amazing to see you do it.
Yeah, well, I'm not. Trust me, I'm just a normal, regular guy. Anyone could do this. I've just been very lucky that I got the opportunity to do it.
No, oh man, trust me. I think a little bit of skill had something to do with it. See, that's your humility there. You are keeping your
Sure.
humility.
Well, I'll
Um,
say this. You know, I have been honing my sort of craft and execution skills since I was a kid. You
yeah,
know what I mean? The craft of the edit and the shot flow and the, you know, the camera and, you know, lighting and, you know, just the craft side of things. So I've been honing that for a long time, and I like to say that Maze Runner was very much a chance for me to really
show
kind of,
off.
you know, yeah, not show off, but learn it. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah,
think if you were to watch that, I don't go back and watch my movies for the most part. Um, but I imagine, you know, in a couple of years I will. But I imagine you look at the Maze Runner movies, you'll see an interesting kind of growth and sort of execution level stuff.
yeah,
Now, you know, there was always, you know, lots of criticism about the story quality and all that stuff. Fair enough. So there is this interesting kind of, you know, point where it's like that first movie was such an interesting story and so kind of compelling. And then by the end of the movie, maybe it wasn't quite as much. Whatever, that's up for debate. But I think you do see that there's a level of kind of craft and sort of polish
yeah,
and just kind of execution skill that you actually see grow. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And so, you know, we tried to bring that into what was going to be next, which was Mouse Guard, where we really kind of show off and do some crazy stuff, and that obviously went down. But then we obviously roll that into Planet of the Apes, which is a whole new kind of level to play in. And again, learned a crap ton on this movie, man. I mean, like you said, like I look back and like, ah, damn, we didn't quite get that one, or we didn't quite do that right, or I should
Wow.
have thought about this when I was doing that, and I'll take those kind of lessons into the next movie. You know what I mean? That's kind of the fun of it all. And hopefully I just don't shit the bed, on any of these movies where I don't get to do another one. You know what I mean?
I think that's going to be my quote of the interview. Director of Kingdom of Planet Apes. Hopefully, I don't
That's
shit the
right.
bed in the next one.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So did you learn from this never to work with horses again? Or are you open to that? Or
Yeah, I'll tell you, that was my first movie with horses. They are difficult. They are difficult. They are animals. Someone said that. It's like, don't work around water, don't work around babies, and don't work with animals. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And oftentimes I said, guys, I do not have fucking time to deal with these horses. They're going to be CG. And so we took the horses out and let the horses be CG. So we had that power in this movie. I couldn't do that. I
wait, is
tried
that what
not to
you
wield
did?
it. Oh yeah, there's several scenes that have the CG horses. Yeah.
You're like, these horses are being divas. They're here
Yeah.
asking about their agents and stuff
Oh,
like that.
there's one in particular when like Owen in particular, the horse it was pissing him off. It was like nipping at him or doing something. It was just grumpy that day. And then Owen just screw that. And Owen's a very even keeled, nice guy, and he just lost his temper. It was the first time I'd ever seen it, and the only time I ever saw it. And I said, "All good, dude. Horse, fly the horses out of here. Get them the hell out of here." All right, we put a ladder there and let him just sit on a ladder, and we animated it instead.
You just took the horse behind the curtain and we don't know what happened afterward.
That's right.
Just went down the
But
elevator.
yeah, horses, man, they are tough. They and credit goes to my Graham, my horse wrangler. He was an awesome dude, and I was warned about horses early on that they can be difficult. But fortunately, like Owen in particular, Peter, they did a lot of horse riding in this thing, and they did a lot of horse training for a couple of
Yeah,
weeks, before we started moving. So and Owen already had quite a lot of skill kind of with a horse already, so that helped a lot. And Freya too. She actually knew her way around a horse pretty well too. So that helped a lot, just having a sense of people that already kind of had a comfort level with these animals. I'd never ridden a freaking horse when I started this movie. At least I did. I did. I was a kid. I don't even remember it.
yeah.
So I got to go out and ride a horse, and
Wow.
and just, oh yeah, it is difficult, and our number one thing on set is safety. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And horses are an element of chaos on set
yeah.
that can lead to accidents. So we have to be extra careful with these things. You know what I mean? And so yeah, we'll see. I'll probably horses are definitely in my future, so we'll have to
Have you
deal with
ever heard
it.
have you ever heard John Carpenter? He was doing an interview and someone said, would you ever do a Western? And he said, no, I would never work with horses. Write me a Western without a horse and then we'll talk about it. And I was like,
Yeah. I do a Western skinned in a different genre. You know what I mean? Because
yeah.
there is something interesting about the language of the Western that doesn't necessarily have to apply to cowboys and horses. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Which we've obviously seen that in many different movies, but I don't know. Westerns would be freaking cool if you come up with a great Western.
Yeah.
Like Once Upon a Time in the West is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah?
It's just a great movie. Django Unchained, I think, is one of the great westerns that we've had. It's often overlooked because it's a
Yeah.
Tarantino movie, and he has kind of he's his own genre in a
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
But to
exactly,
me,
exactly.
like that and Hateful Eight, I love Tarantino's westerns. They are just freaking perfectly, masterfully
The
executed.
Hateful Eight,
You know,
I mean,
Hateful Eight, good too. Yeah, totally right.
the end where Walton Goggins is reading the letter, he goes, "Oh, Mary Todd,
Oh yeah,
that's
oh
a
Mary
nice
Todd.
touch. That's a nice
That
touch."
that's a nice touch. Oh man, I love Walton. Obviously I work with Walton on the last Maze Runner movie, and dude's amazing.
Is
He's so
he?
cool.
Oh, dude,
I texted him too, after Fallout came out, because I love Fallout. Fallout, I thought was
it's
great.
so good,
That was
man.
really good stuff. I mean, for me too, I look at it from an execution level, because like it's so well shot. It's
Yeah,
so well put together. It really kind of transcends that sort of streaming look that everyone kind of is aware of and don't know it.
yeah.
You know what I mean? They did a fantastic job, and I think Walton is just awesome. Everyone, but I texted Walton. I said, just don't forget, baby. I'm the first one who did noseless Walton Goggins.
Stick him in the next ape films. Do you look at actors
So,
now and imagine them as apes? Has that changed, or are you already?
not really. No, not really. I haven't gotten to that point. I definitely were, obviously, when we were casting this movie, I was thinking about that a lot, um, but it's weird because you know, you obviously with apes movies, you have to think about that. Oh, they have to kind of hold themselves a certain way and find the kind of way to sort of be an ape. There's
Yeah,
that element, but for the most part, they're just good actors.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
what they're main. That's what you're mainly looking for is people that can like, you know, forget about all this crazy apparatus, technological stuff on them, and forget about all the tech around them, and
yeah,
just be in the moment and do a good job. That's the first thing they have to do. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And so it's kind of for the most part, it's very much like casting like a regular movie. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Apes movies.
And what's funny, it was I was thinking about a way to articulate this question because normally I talk. What interests me, I think, in films is humanity, and when you can see that humanity, I think which most people, and I
Mhm.
don't, I think it's very hard to find a filmmaker who will tell you they're not interested in humanity, and I think
Sure.
there's a lot of humanity in this apes film, but like in the apes in a way, not human behavior per se, but humanity, emotions, and so was there a lot of that mocap because. I'm sure you had the control, and a lot of it was really a focus on performance, And I'm sure when you're doing Maze Runner and you're in a big set, and you're also worrying about, okay, maybe we have to do this later on, or we have to worry about this. But when you're on a set, you have more time to just focus on performance.
Yeah, I don't know. So far, every movie has been a race. You
Really?
know, I think it's just the way it is. All movies are kind of this sense of, you know, you're running out of time. You know, you're always running out of time, especially on an apes movie, because like I shoot pretty fast. Like those Maze Runner movies, we would do 30, 40 setups a day. That's really fast.
Yeah.
You know, we're good, we're going, man. We're just shooting, you know,
Do you
and
storyboard?
um sometimes
Yeah.
I do for sure. I did a lot more on apes for sure.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate kind of just going out on set and we figure it out together, you know, on in the real place. And
Yeah.
we have ideas, of course, going in. And I've gotten more comfortable and more confident in just being able to do that, where you just show up on set and like, actor, you know, what do you think? I think you come over here. Oh, you want to go over there? Okay. Oh, if you do that, then I can do a shot over here and like this. And
Yeah.
hey, Jula, my DP, what if we put a light here? You know, it's that it becomes a kind of a thing we discover together. And a lot of times you'll find these little happy accidents that are just you couldn't have planned. You know what I mean? And I love that feeling. You know what I mean? That kind of spontaneity. I think that was really key for us on apes because, you know, the process is so constrained and
Yeah.
rigid
Yeah.
that, you know, how do you kind of make it feel a little bit like we just kind of got it by accident? And that's really difficult to do. But you know, on that speed thing, you know, we'd shoot so much on the other movies, but in this movie, because it's so time consuming, you know, I would get 10 or 12, you know, setups a day. If I was lucky, I got 18 or something, you know, but it's a really difficult process. It's like it's a very different process than any normal movie making thing to get to be able to do it right, to do it well. So that's always been that was a really huge steep learning curve on this one. And it just meant we had to be kind of at times less fancy with the camera, you know, and sometimes it's a good thing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Does that scare you though, showing up and not knowing it could go in any direction? I know some filmmakers who, the Coen brothers are very, they know what they know, like they can know exactly how it's going to
Yeah,
happen. There's no room for kind of spontaneity. And that's one
yeah.
way to work. That's not necessarily a wrong way, but does that scare you showing up and knowing like this could go in any direction, or do you welcome that?
I kind of welcome it at this point, you
Has it
know.
scared
That's not
you?
to, it's not to say we're just like, well, I don't know what to do. We certainly know, oh, we're gonna be somewhere in this area and we're gonna be
Yeah.
looking this way, so don't park the trucks there. You know, we'll have a sense of it. You know what I mean?
Mm.
But you know, it's like, you know, we might have like usual, you know, when you in your first movie, you plan out, you know, 50 shots for the day, and yeah, you're not gonna get that. You're gonna get, you know, whatever it is, you know, 20, 30. And on this movie, it's like, yeah, you know, we'll get 12. So you end up trying to be a little bit more, you're thinking about the editing. Oh, I don't need to cut to another shot here. I can just hold in this shot. You know, it's
Yeah.
like you just find ways to try to kind of engage people. And so you'll see it in this movie and Apes in particular. The shot average length is like ridiculously long. I
Really?
think it's something like 6 seconds a shot or something on average, which the usual is like a second or two. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I love kind of shots that are kind of like editing in camera essentially. You know, a shot that
Yeah.
starts here, the character turns and it becomes another person's shot. And that to me is pure cinema.
Yeah.
That's what, you know, masters like Spielberg is so damn good at, you know.
The
Like they're just
blocking.
really good at blocking. You know what I mean? And blocking that is invisible. That's what's another thing that's really hard to do is when you move the camera sometimes it can feel like, why is this camera moving right now? It's pulling me out of the moment. And it's like how you kind of justify the movement and how you kind of, do this little dance with the actors and the camera. I love that stuff. And sometimes you don't have time for it. Sometimes unfortunately, we got an hour to shoot this scene. We just got to be, medium, close up. And I hate it when we have to do that, but sometimes you have to do that. You know what I mean? I hate coverage. I hate coverage. But
I hate
um,
coverage. Yeah.
but with that comes some challenges, where you're locking yourself in obviously to these longer shots or whatever it is. And sometimes, for today's audience that, lives on TikTok and, it's just the society in which we live, everything's coming at us much faster.
Yeah,
And so sometimes it does ask the audience to be a little patient.
I
You
know.
know what I mean? And
Yeah.
sometimes that's it. Sometimes it won't work, sometimes it will, but it felt like it was the right thing for us in this movie to like, you know, take our time and let people try to like immerse themselves in this world and these characters. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's all fucking fascinating stuff, man.
But what I love about this is that you actually embrace some more simplistic camera
Yeah.
movements. Yeah, I heard you talk about this in an interview. You were very inspired by the '68 Planet of the Apes and how the camera move and using anamorphic lenses as well. I'm
Yeah.
sure everyone clicked on this expecting us to talk about. I know we're here talking about just the aspects of filmmaking, but what was it? What was that decision of embracing simplistic camera movements? But even in this, I'm sure there's a few scenes where you really go wild, and I think it really works.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
was making those simplistic camera movement decisions. What was that decision like? Did you question that much, or you like it has to be this? It feels right. Was that instinct, or what was that process like of deciding to, you know?
Yeah. It's funny. It was something we learned along the way a little bit. Certainly wanted to have this kind of feel of like, oh, let's feel like one of the older movies. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's where the anamorphic thing came from. That's where our kind of LUT kind of choices came from. Um, it was it was in an effort to like frankly differentiate ourselves from the last trilogy, which
yeah,
was shot on spherical, was shot in Vancouver with a particular kind of like light, and feel and aesthetic. And we wanted to kind of like we needed to kind of come up with a new chapter, a new day, a new kind of timeline in a way. And so that those choices were kind of early on. But then in terms of like the blocking side of things and like where to put the camera, we just kind of found ourselves. And again, this was like a choice that we were imagining what was going to come because we obviously didn't have any visual effects when we were shooting the
yeah,
movie, right? We were just
yeah,
kind of having to imagine it. But we kind of knew enough from the previous movies and all the kind of talking to everyone who's done those movies before that it is mind-blowing stuff. And it felt like sometimes like when the camera's too fancy for no reason, it almost detracted from the magic that was happening on screen with Weta and converting
wow,
these apes into creatures. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's like it became like a hat in a hat. This is an
yeah,
old saying, where it's like it's like it's more interesting to just kind of sit there and be simple so that you could focus on this incredible feat
yeah,
of of CG that you identify with and believe is real. It's wild, so and somehow adding in like some fancy kind of dolly move or a push in for no sake,
yeah.
it started to kind of feel false in some weird way. So there was a couple scenes actually early on where we went and we reshot them
Really?
because we were worried this doesn't feel like we should do this move after the fact, you know what I mean? And so we kind of found 30 minutes in the day and kind of redid it.
Yeah,
And sometimes you still use some of that earlier stuff, but it was just kind of an early call to try to like, keep things simple and let the kind of the work speak for itself and the narrative kind of speak for itself. But yeah, it's not to say we don't have a couple fancy shots in there. There's definitely a couple of them in there that
yeah,
are like, whoa, it's wild.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah, but
but
it
that's
was fun to
fascinating.
think about that.
So was it very what you would storyboard for? If it was like, I'm sure a lot of the end sequence, would you have probably storyboarded for something like that? But if it's like, I don't know, a dialogue scene, would you not storyboard for that? What's that like?
Yeah, I kind of wouldn't storyboard the dialogue scene. Although I did, for instance, I storyboarded the scene at the campfire and Freya comes out of the shadows and grabs the food
Yeah,
and Raka and Noah are talking. I storyboarded the hell out of that. Dan Milligan is one of our storyboard artists who's absolutely fantastic.
yeah,
And so I storyboarded that. a storyboard of the opening funeral with Caesar. Obviously, we're
Mm.
getting the spoilers here, guys. So if anyone at this point hasn't seen it, too late.
Click off.
Yeah, go watch the movie and then we come back to this. But open storyboard of the opening kind of funeral with my friend Joel Venti early on, and yeah, all over. Honestly, we did some storyboards for the ending,
Wow.
but a lot of that was found in post, because all of it was CG anyway. Like
Yeah.
all that flood stuff was basically full CG, and
Wow.
so we got to kind of like almost do what Avatar did in a sense, where you capture the performance and stuff, and then you figure out what we can kind of like, oh, that'd be cool. We did this and this, and all that kind of stuff. So that was a little bit more of a process. And same thing with the opening egg climb stuff with all the climbing.
Yeah.
That was we pre-vised it for sure. We had some ideas of things we wanted to keep. And a lot of times what I'll find with previs and storyboards is I'll find 2 or 3 of the great shots that have to be in it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then everything else is kind of, we'll figure it out. You know what I mean? So I've kind of gotten to that place now, basically, where it's like there's a few shots that I know I want,
Yeah.
that I want to hang the scene on. And then we can kind of like, we can mess around for the shots around it and kind of find an interesting way to kind of pull it off. But yeah, it just depends, honestly. Sometimes the shots they need to be storyboarded or previs just so that the departments can manage the complexity, and
Yeah.
dialogue scenes probably not, but giant, exploding doors or horses, pulling things. Yeah, we have to kind of do that kind of stuff.
Did you enjoy getting to, deal with so much of it in post, because,
Yeah.
obviously it's CG and VFX, or was that actually to the point where you could pick some, because I know you talked about this bit at the start, but you'd be looking at a scene, or like, I know you talked about this in the other interview, you'd be like, we don't need that bird there, get that bird out there. Was that good for you? Was it healthy almost to
No, I
have that
love it.
much
Yeah,
time?
no,
Yeah.
that to me, that's my world. That's where I have the most fun, is really in post. I don't like shooting personally. Shooting is
The
just compromise.
necessary
That's all it
evil.
is. Yeah, exactly. It is purely that. Most of it is heartbreak for me because like I didn't get that shot, that thing
Yeah.
didn't work out the way I wanted it to, whatever it is, you know what I mean? It's all, it's the very beginnings when you're developing a project, and it's the sky is yours, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's that. The sky's the limit kind of stuff. And then you got the very end where it's like, okay, let's get down and let's actually put this together and put the music in and figure out the lighting. And when you're dealing with our movie, where so much of it is in post, like I had an incredible amount of power, to create shots and moments that did not exist, that we didn't plan on. Whole sequences that were just full CG that I could put the camera anywhere I wanted, and put the light wherever I wanted, and do exactly what I wanted to do. And that's fun. And just the sheer challenge of it was totally appealing, as let's try to wield this incredible tool of CG, especially in the hands of Weta, and
Yeah.
make people sort of forget about it. Think
Yeah.
that it's real. That's a hell of a magic trick to try to pull off. You know what I mean? And I think we're successful most of the time, and maybe not always. I look back on it and there's a couple of shots like, I wish that shot was better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but for the most part, I think we did a good job of just, you know, making people forget they're watching visual effects. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean?
That's what I love. That's what I love most about these films is that you do forget, and I think you embrace it on its own terms, and all of a sudden it's not so
Yeah.
much a suspension of disbelief because you're in belief almost. This
Yeah.
is all real to you. Everything in front of you is real. Like I was
Yeah,
watching it,
sure.
and it's not until afterwards when you start taking part. But I think it's really amazing how you can get an audience to accept it on your terms. And I know that's something that
Yeah.
a lot of filmmakers would probably struggle with, because that's half the battle, trying to get the
Yeah.
just
That is actually it, because it's one shot can break the spell.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's such a fine line to walk. It's incredibly difficult task. I have a huge amount of respect now for Rupert and especially Matt, who did the last two, you
Yeah.
know, wielding this crazy thing. It is way more difficult than I even thought it was. You know what I mean? Going in. And I knew enough to be dangerous, you know. But man, it's so much fun. It really, that is for me. I love it. I always said I wanted to do a mocap movie, like Avatar or whatever it is. That remains, I definitely want to do something that is, where you you kind of have full control to,
Yeah.
entertain that perfectionist in yourself. And again, you're never there, because you're still the same thing with shooting. you deal with the same issues just on a longer scale with the CG and the visual effects of it all. Because, yes, we could keep working on this shot and make it 10% better and spend, a couple weeks doing it, but it means you're gonna take away the time on this shot that needs to get done. So it's that constant balance of just where do you compromise and where do you kind of go with it. And fortunately, I'm working with Weta, who are just the best what they do, and pretty much everything I threw at them, they did
Yeah.
it with they exceeded my expectations. You know what I mean? So they're just incredibly talented group of people that I'll work with for the rest of as long as they'll have me.
It's funny hearing you talk about compromises because I heard a quote once and I don't know where it's from, but it's like a film dies on the heel of 1,000 compromises. You know,
Yes,
like
absolutely.
you take one and then it kind of spirals out from there.
Yeah,
But
that's
like,
right.
and
That's why that's why I always tell people, like, when I'm first starting out, is, you have to be incredibly ambitious.
yeah,
You have to reach for something that is impossible, because you won't get there no matter what you choose. You can reach right here and you're going to get halfway. You can reach way over there and you're only going to get halfway there. So go really far so that you can push yourself to
wow,
the absolute limit and pull off something that is compromised for sure, but hopefully really ambitious still. You know what I mean?
yeah. And mate, dude, that you hit the nail on the head there. And I'd love to ask you, this is like a film specific question. If it's a spoiler and you don't want to answer it, that's fine. And the contents of The Vault, my friend Andy McCarroll, he's a great film critic in Ireland. I put out a post saying I'm going to interview my new best friend, Wes Ball. So if anyone has any questions, send them in. And he was wondering, did the contents of what was inside the vault change, or was there much, what was the thought process with the vault? And if you don't want to spoil anything, that's fine, but it's up to you.
Yeah, I mean, the contents of the vault really comes down to that little scene between Noah and Proximus at the window during that dinner table scene,
Yeah,
where he explains, you know, humans are nothing without their tools.
yeah,
We are weak creatures, unable to survive in this harsh world. The only reason that we've been able to climb to become these alphas and ultimately fall is the tools that we can create. You know what I mean? That's what gives us our power.
yeah,
And so that's what's inside there. It is power. It is tools. And for Proximus, it's, perhaps weapons, perhaps tanks, which is obviously you see, scattered throughout. But for May, it's more knowledge. It's more,
yeah,
that's the real weapon. You know what I mean? That can be
yeah,
wielded. So yeah, the vault was kind of just this a place to store, mankind's superpowers, and it was there to be claimed by whoever got there first, and obviously May got what she wanted and Proximus almost got what he wanted. But I think in the we're definitely setting up stuff there for future movies. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Whether
yeah,
it's
yeah.
that
No.
vault or not, it's ultimately a struggle between two creatures that are going to, kind of compete for supremacy in the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And so I love that concept of, like, mankind had left behind all these treasures that were just waiting to be rediscovered. And we kind of touched on that obviously throughout the movie with Noah. And if nothing else, Noah is, he is that explorer who wants to go into those new territories. He wants to understand. He's a scientist, basically. You
yeah,
know what I mean? And so I think it's gonna be really interesting to watch where that takes them. Both of
yeah.
them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%, man. I can't wait for that. And there's a quote you said in one of your interviews that I stopped and it actually stopped me in tracks and it made me realize this is why I love these films, the ape films. It's that you said, because they're apes, they allow us to hold a mirror up to ourselves and ask us what it means to be human. And for me, that was like, oh, of course, that's why I like these films. I mean, we've seen it in the past. Even with Woody Harrelson's character, who I thought was
Yeah.
probably one of like he was such a terrific villain in those
Yeah.
films. But you get to see these aspects of humanities and like even the original being an allegory for racism and stuff like that. What
Yeah.
was it like
Well,
for you?
especially in the original, right?
Yeah,
Because you're basically judging humanity, but you feel almost free to do so because they're apes,
yeah,
right? And whether they know it or not depends on, the level of the viewer, and stuff. Whether they know it or not, that subconscious thing of, oh, maybe I should not treat people differently or whatever it is, right? You know what I mean? That's
yeah,
the power, I think, of good sci-fi, especially these
yeah,
these apes movies, that they are they are doing that. That distance, that weird distance, lets us hold up that mirror. And if we don't know it at first. Some people are obviously very attuned to it and understand exactly what we're doing. And some people, they're just there for entertainment. They just want the kind of, the fun and all stuff. But hopefully what gets slipped in there is some of these larger ideas that allows you to kind of have some humility and question yourself. And how do we better ourselves as a species? How do we not kind of follow the same mistakes that we see over and over again, all those things. So yeah, it's a fascinating franchise in that regard,
And what was it like to ask yourself that question and then find a way? Because I feel like you did it so well in this film. And I know you talked about the idea of these cities crumbling and ivy growing over and it almost becoming part of the environment. And like to me, that was like visually, that's such an amazing idea. And I think that's obviously very clear in your work from Ruin to Maze Runner. I think
Yeah,
there's
sure.
aspects of that. So it was really great to see you kind of unleash. But what was it like to ask yourself that question?
Yeah, no, it was fun. That to me was part of the appeal of this thing, is that a character gets to rediscover a lost world. I mean, you know, starts me with Indiana Jones. It's like,
Yeah.
as a kid running around in the woods trying to find one of those ancient, Mayan temples or whatever that had treasure inside of it. I wanted to do that stuff. You know what I mean? And here you get to do that in a weird way, right? There are all these incredible kind of caverns, these great, lost worlds that are slowly being erased by time. That's just
Yeah.
a freaking cool idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Absolutely, and I think you're one of the perfect filmmakers to embrace that. And man, I'm sorry, I don't want to take up too much time. So my last
That's all
couple of
right.
questions, I'd love to ask you. Proximus is an amazing villain, and like one of my best friends, Ryan, I saw the film twice, once with my family, once with him. Like people in my school are saying, "What a wonderful day!" Like
Yeah, that's good.
that's
That's
had like
cool.
almost a
What
cultural
a
impact.
wonderful day. Say
Yeah.
his words.
Are we grateful for the words of Caesar?
Are
Like
we
everyone's
grateful
saying
for the words of Caesar?
it. Do you say it in your everyday life too?
Oh yeah. Well, the thing is, we have around the editing room because we're living with these freaking performances for a year and change,
Yeah.
and we all of us were like, we have tons of them, and we're all over
Wow.
the place. I can't remember what they all are, but like, there's another one that Proximus says that no one picks up on, but there's this moment where they're in the vault, and he's like, tell me what you planned and what all this stuff with her and him, and Noah just can't answer, and he goes, okay, next tact. And we all going around each other in the editing room being like, okay, it's just fun because it's so weird. You know what I mean? All
Yeah.
these characters, you know what I mean?
And it had that
Noah,
cultural
Noah
impact of
going, huh, huh, huh.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's just, we're always doing these things. And because it's so weird and it's so specific, you know what I mean? And
yeah,
like no one else could do that in
yeah.
any other movie. We can, so that's why it's so kind of fun to play with these things. And I'm glad people kind of, took to it and stuff. Yeah, you always hope for that kind of thing, which
It's
is
hilarious, and it feels like I didn't know that actually became a joke with you before anyone else got it. It seems like it was almost like it was its destiny to go on to have that impact. Like, what a wonderful day! Like it's just like it is just a line that you hear, and it seems to have just connected with so much people, and like that's
yeah.
I'm sure that's probably rewarding. That's probably not an aspect you think too much about when you're making a film. So that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's fun. I mean, it means people. It means it connected with people in some way.
Yeah,
That's all I care about. I don't care if they like it, if they don't like it. They're
if they
thinking about it.
connect.
It got in there somehow. They're gonna remember it forever. They're gonna remember that they hated it. Or they're gonna remember they loved it. That's fine. It's the movies where like, what? I forgot. I even watched that movie. That's the ones I don't want. Where I don't want to be. Where it's so freaking inert that it just goes in one ear and out the other. That's to
Yeah.
me. Uh, I don't want to be there. You know.
And yeah, and what I love about these ape films is that they almost like in a lot of way they hold up a mirror to our, to our world, to our history.
Yeah.
What I love about
Yeah.
Proximus is that he's almost a despot. He's like he's
Yeah.
become this king, and we've seen
Yeah.
that in human history.
Yeah.
And
That's
like,
that's all what it's about. I mean, that is what these movies are. That's why we even took this
yeah,
this approach with this one. It's a historical epic. You
literally,
could easily make this, a part of our history long ago. You know what I mean? It's just we have this cool sci-fi component, of it's apes doing it and the remains of a human world. And so I love that idea that we were not going to go into the future and they have full-on democracies and all that kind of stuff and full-on clothes. We've
yeah,
still got a long time before we get to that. Let's
yeah,
play with like, our own story of humanity, kind of how we, climbed out of the mud and started to build our own kind of sense of society and
Yeah.
civilization and modernity. That's cool. Like, let's do that. And so hopefully we can do that for a long time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And so what was it like about Proximus? What do you feel like it takes to be a great Planet of the Apes villain, which I think Proximus has absolutely solidified himself as. But what is that process of truly creating a great villain as a
Yeah,
film?
well, I think the thing I keep hearing a lot from people, obviously the movie's been out like 3 weeks now, and I obviously hear all the topics and stuff, the conversation. Um, but people wrestle with it because they agree with him a lot of
Yeah.
times. That's where you want to be, man.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
that you don't have to be evil to go wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, you can actually have the right intentions in a weird way, but if you lose your soul in the process, you know, you lose your humanity and your mercifulness, or your compassion, you know, which is what Caesar obviously talked about, or Rocket talked about with Noah. It's the component that Proximus is missing, you know,
Yeah.
is some of those things, the key ideas that make it all become a truly great leader, you know, and not like an authoritarian kind of leader. Um, that's interesting. You know what I mean? To me, that's fascinating stuff to kind of chew on. And yeah, it was Genghis Khan is kind of a figure that I looked at a lot. You know, it was the same
Yeah.
thing. You know, you remember you ever watch Hero, you know, or you know, several of these movies where you know the the kind of tyrant actually has this noble goal in mind, but is willing to kill everyone to accomplish it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Basically, or you know, rule with an iron fist, all that kind of stuff. It's fascinating. You know, what does it take to lead people? You know, do you inspire them or do you force them? Do you scare them? You know, like we throughout human history, we've had both.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think it's fascinating to see, you know, where Noah is going to wind up in that spectrum. How is he going to lead people? What does he learn from this experience?
Wow.
And how has he been infected by these different figures that have come in and out of his life? Because you know, a Pandora's box has been opened by the end of this movie,
Yeah.
and it won't be shut. So
Yeah.
you know, there will be, you know, lots of interesting kind of you know, drama to navigate, I think, in the future movies. You know what I mean?
And what I love is that you've also changed how I watched the previous three films. You know, I
Oh
think
yeah,
that's what, yeah, you know, like it, everything is continued because it's always been that. It's always been apes and humans. You know, we see Woody Harrelson and Caesar, the dialogue they have between each other, which I think is like that,
yeah,
like hitting it. And then we get to see a different aspect that we get to see ape versus ape, but it is always ape versus human. It's that inherent question that's been lingering over all of it since the
yeah,
start
yeah.
to now. And I
Well,
love seeing how you kind of dissect that. And so I
it's
can't
always
wait.
that little discussion about, like, you know, how do you human beings are very susceptible to uh succumbing to fear, you
Yeah.
know, like we fear what we don't understand, we fear what is different. That's just in our instinct, you know, it's our
Yeah.
default. And so it's fun to kind of explore those aspects with May as a character and Noah as a character, you know, um, that that it's easy to fear things we don't understand. And I think we see that in our society today. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that's ultimately, I think, what these movies have always been about. Ultimately, you know, there's extra tiers of that, you know, racism or classism or, you know, whatever it is, you know. But it always comes down to that notion of how do we respond to things that we don't understand fully. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I think that we'll continue to do that.
Yeah. Amazing. And the future is bright. Man, my last couple of questions before I let you go. This is just a general filmmaker question. What is your
Yeah.
dream project? You could do anything. Is there any I mean, you've done so much studio films, but is there any other world you'd like to hop into, or is there an independent project you want to do for a while? What is your dream project?
Oh, I've got a couple of them for sure.
Really?
One I'm already working on,
Yeah.
so that's one. You
Deadly.
know, going into the land of Hyrule, so that'll be a big one. Um, you know, there are books that I really love that are very different um projects for me.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I don't think I should say actually what they are because they're all kind of in various stages, so I can't really say.
Oh, really? So
But
these
yeah.
dream projects are actually something you're in the.
Oh
It's
yeah,
something
I'm chasing those dreams, man. That's what I do, no matter what. And sometimes I hit a brick wall and I hit chase after them, but I go after them, man. You know, because like,
you jumped the
why
brick
not?
wall. You
That's
jumped the
right,
bridge.
exactly. And I'm working on that,
It's
But
amazing.
Mouse Guard is another one.
Yeah.
Freaking hell, that would be absolutely amazing.
I'm sure that was
Um,
crushing, man.
yeah, it was to some degree, but also I had a lot of fun doing it. And I learned a lot doing it too, So and that's the kind of thing that can always come back. You know what I
Literally,
mean?
man. There you go.
That is timeless. So
Yeah.
it doesn't have to come out last year or 2020 what it was supposed to. It can come out in 2030 and it'll still be awesome. Um, whatever. But yeah, I don't know. There's always those things, but yeah, I don't know. I'm always trying to hold on to the stuff that you kind of grew up on, That's the
What about
truth of it
genre?
all.
Is there a genre? Western? We talked about Western. That'd be deadly.
Yeah, Westerns would be cool.
Cheeky Western out, yeah.
Honestly, like and this is one book that I want to do, honestly, but like I think it'd be fun to do a love story,
Really?
like the way Titanic is a love story. But
Yeah.
it's also a great spectacle disaster movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, genre bend all this stuff. I really want to do a space movie. I've touched on a few of those. Like, I want to go to space, man. And I want to do some cool freaking sci-fi. I've dabbled in a few things that just it weren't quite right. It's got to be something special. It's got to be something different. So I
Yeah.
got that. And I don't know, westerns, yeah, it'd be awesome. I don't think I would ever do horror. I don't think.
Yeah.
I'd love to like help participate in making a horror, and I've got a couple of things that I'm working on with like some filmmaker friends of mine that I'll just help them get their movie made, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So horror is a fun genre that I think can still kind of survive in the theatrical kind of world. You know what I mean? Which
Yeah.
is incredibly strained right now. Um,
They
but
always
I
do
don't know.
well. Horror films, I've
Yeah,
been very
because
surprised.
it is one of the few that is actually enhanced by the audience around you, the strangers around you. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? You get a better experience in a theater with a large crowd of people engaging with the movie than you do at home watching it by yourself.
Wow.
You just
Yeah.
get a better thing.
I've never thought about that.
Not that you can't have a great experience at home, not you can't, but it is better in the theater when you're all and everyone screams around you and you kind of someone has a little giggle because they're scared and they laugh a little bit. You know what I mean? All that's a part of the
Wow.
experience of a great horror movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, man. I just chase things that are hopefully interesting and different and emotionally kind of resonant. That's what I look for. That could be a small movie, that could be a big movie. I don't really care. I just want to go out and have fun and work with great people and try to make something cool for audiences.
Amazing, man. My last and final question for you before I finally let you get back
Oh
to your
man, it
very
better be a good one.
busy life. What advice would you have for anyone looking to become a filmmaker?
Hmm. Yeah. I
Don't work
have
with
this.
horses. Never work with
Yeah,
horses.
right. I have a couple of things actually that, one, I'll say this. And it's been said before, but it's worth repeating. Um, everyone's story getting in and starting is different.
Yeah.
So don't try to follow in someone else's footsteps necessarily, right? So that's that. It takes absolute ambition, and perseverance because you're going to bump up against constant um, failure. You're going to become against refusal, rejection. It's just constant. It just will be forever,
Yeah.
in the business. And if you don't have that fire and drive within you to screw that and keep going, then it's just not going to work anyway. So you have to have that. So and hold on to that. And it's okay to kind of be down when you get rejected, and you don't have to like you can take on those feelings and let them do what they're going to do, but just try to at some point push them away and get started on the next thing. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
And then the last thing, that one of the best bits of advice that I ever got was from a filmmaker in my film school at FSU Film School. His name was Andy Rubin. He did a lot of kind of like direct to video kind of movies and B movies and stuff like that. But he was a really great kind of teacher that kind of just wound us up and let us go essentially. But he told us that right when we were all leaving film school when we graduated, he told us this really, I thought, really poignant thing, and that you're going to have 10 failures before your first success.
Wow. Yeah.
It just accept it, right? So get those 10 failures out of the way as quick as possible. Don't sit there and linger on the one project that you're so sure is going to kind of be the thing that's going to launch you into the stratosphere, and just keep working it forever. Make it, get it done, put it out into the world, learn from it, experience what that's like, push it aside, move on to the next one. And you keep doing that 10 times, 10 times, 10 times. And I promise somewhere along that way, you're going to find your path. And maybe that path is not the thing that you ultimately think you want to do. And that's totally fine. I had a ton of people that wanted to be editors, that wanted to be directors, that wanted to be this, said, oh, I'm a better producer, or I'm a better sound designer, or that's fine. You know what I mean? That's great. So that's my biggest thing for people to hold on to. You know what I
That's
mean? And then
amazing, man.
I'm still learning my advice for people that there's a whole bunch of advice for once you get in, what do you do? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's a whole other kind of thing. I'm still kind of in that process, figuring all that, navigating those waters, but I think people just starting out, it's that. And like we're in a place now where an iPhone camera looks freaking great.
I know.
You
Yeah,
know what I mean? You don't need some great, tools to go out and make a funny short. Look at, 28 days later, it was shot in a freaking high 8 camera, and it works because of it. You know what I mean? It
yeah,
looks fantastic because it's so crude, and you don't need expensive film equipment to go make something great. So hold on to that idea. You just need, this is one of the harder parts, is you got to get people around you. You can't do it by yourself. You do have to find people that are like you, that want to also do that thing, an actor, a cinematographer, a visual effects artist, whatever it is, group of people that want to go do this thing. That is hard to do. I didn't find those people until I went to film school. Personally, I didn't have it where I grew up. So there's that. But focus on a good story well told. That's really kind of it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Be ambitious, dream big, make failure, fail big. It's fine. This is now the chance where you can fail and learn from those failures. You'll learn more from failure than you will success. It is the truth. That's why that 10 failures thing is really key. And then the last thing I'll give people when they are kind of in the act of making this stuff, and whatever camera you use and all that kind of stuff, and the lighting you do, don't spend any money on anything, or at least spend the most money that you spend on your project on sound.
yeah,
Sound is the most important thing, the dividing line between something that feels professional and something that doesn't. Sound is everything. 50%, more than 50% of the experience is sound. So focus on getting great sound. Doesn't matter about cameras, doesn't matter about any of that stuff. But like, you'll take a crappy camera, but if it sounds great, it sounds clear, you go with it. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So that's one of the biggest little shortcuts to people kind of accepting kind of your stuff, as it somehow, I don't know why, but it feels more professional. It's sound. So go do that.
Man, that is some absolutely terrific advice, sir. I can't thank you enough for being willing to chat with me. I'm so sorry for taking up so much of your time. The
That's all
fact
good,
that
man.
I,
It's
I
a
got to
pleasure to
chat with,
chat with you.
it was really such an honor. Before we finish up, are you on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, anywhere people can go check out your work?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, Wes Ball, WESBALL, and you'll find me there. And I'm
Amazing.
usually, that's really the only place I really am. I don't really have a website anymore. I need to put something up there because people forget the stuff that I have done, but eventually I'll do that. I'm not really on Instagram because someone took my name, my handle, Wes Ball, and they like put pictures of me up there and are acting like it's me. I think the site went, the account went down, but I want to get it back. So if anyone knows anyone on Instagram that can get me my handle back, I'll take it.
Are you not on Instagram? There's an account that I follow, Wes Ball, and it has your profile picture. That's you?
I don't know if that's me, man. I have one up there that I have, I think it's Wes_Ball or something like that.
Yeah.
But there's another one, Wes Ball, that is not me, that looks like me, but it's just some person that decided to, take all the pictures of me and put it up there. I don't know who it is or what's going on there, but whatever. So I'm not really on Instagram, but Twitter is really the main place where I kind of am. But and I get lots of replies and stuff, so forgive me if I don't reply back to you, but I try to.
Amazing. And any new projects you can promote or talk about? Probably the big one, Kingdom
Yeah,
of the.
just yeah. Zelda is probably the big one that we're working on now, which I can't really talk about, but
Yeah.
we're we're excited for what that thing could be. It will be the biggest thing I've done for sure.
There's a little red dot on your head there. Is that meant to be? You're about to get
Nintendo, I'm sorry.
Mario.
Miyamoto, no.
They just burst into the door. It's Mario on the one side.
Yeah. So there's that, and I got a couple other things too. Lots of other little fun things, and of course we'll continue the apes thing, and got to lots of fun stuff that we'll try to keep working on. We've got a lot of really fun things that we're playing with. Some things I'll direct, some things I won't. You know what I mean? So
Yes, sir.
be on the lookout for it. We'll try to do a good job.
And everyone, go watch Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes in
Indeed.
your local cinema, theater, wherever you are. Go watch it right now. And then you can also, this is a nice little companion piece. We talk about horses. We talked about so much mad shit here. I don't remember half of it. But everyone, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, if you have the means, please make sure to donate to the National Deaf Training Society. Link for that description. But thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you all next video. You can follow me over on Instagram and Twitter, DanielFee33. And Wes, thank you again, sir, from the bottom of my
Thanks,
heart. You're
dude.
such a legend, and this means the world. Thank you all.